Kai had never been to this planet before. It was one of the newer human colonies, a strange blend of high-tech buildings and ancient ruins, where alien species from all over the galaxy came to trade. The market was massive, stretching for miles, filled with all kinds of goods, food, and voices. Some were familiar, others completely alien to him. The hustle and bustle of the marketplace felt alive, like the heart of the entire planet Dot as he walked through the crowded paths. He couldn't help but be amazed at the diversity around him. Humans were still rare in these parts, so his presence caused a bit of a stir, especially among the alien species that had never seen a human before. They looked at him curiously, as if he were a puzzle to be solved, but it was her he noticed first. She stood at one of the stalls, hands moving gracefully as she inspected some kind of glowing crystal. Her appearance was striking, tall, with dark green skin that shimmered under the marketplace lights, her eyes wide and bright, glowing faintly like the stars. Her hair, long and silver, was tied back in a simple braid. Everything about her seemed perfectly normal. Until their eyes met, a moment passed. Just a second, but it felt longer. She blinked quickly and turned her head, almost as if startled. Kai felt a strange sensation in his chest, something he couldn't quite place. Maybe it was the sudden connection that seemed to spark between them, but whatever it was, it lingered. He felt himself drawn toward her, though he quickly dismissed the thought. She was just an alien one of many walking the streets of the market. Still, he couldn't stop looking at her. She glanced back at him for a second, and this time her gaze lingered a little longer. The smile on her face was soft, almost shy, and her cheeks flushed a deep shade of blue, not typical for her species. Kai raised an eyebrow. That was unusual. It was rare to see an alien show any emotion in public, especially not something so human-like as embarrassment. She quickly turned away and hurried down the alley, leaving him with a sense of confusion. What had just happened? Was it something about him, or was it something else? Kai shook his head, unsure of what to make of it. He continued walking through the market, buying a few supplies for his trip, but he couldn't shake the image of her face, flushed and looking at him. Every time he turned a corner, his mind kept returning to her. The following days felt strange. Every time he wandered through the market, he found himself looking for her. He knew it was foolish. He had no reason to think she'd even remember him, let alone want to speak with him again. But for some reason, every time he saw her again, she looked away quickly, as though she were trying to avoid eye contact. But that wasn't all. Each time their paths crossed, he noticed that she seemed to be following him, just a little bit behind. Her movements were subtle, almost as if she didn't want him to notice. And yet, Kai felt the weight of her presence. Like an invisible thread pulling him toward her, he could see her in the distance as he walked past the same stall. This time she was buying fruit from a vendor, but the moment she saw him approaching, she stiffened and looked away again, her cheeks glowing slightly brighter than before. Kai's curiosity grew. Why did she keep doing that? It wasn't just that she blushed, it was the way she seemed so out of place whenever he came near her. A trained diplomat, she must have been accustomed to interacting with humans before. Yet she acted like a nervous teenager in his presence. Kai couldn't help but feel a sense of protectiveness. Maybe she wasn't used to humans, but that still didn't explain her reaction. One afternoon, when he decided to take a break at a cafe in the market, Kai sat near the edge of the crowd, watching the passing travelers. To his surprise, she appeared once again, gliding through the marketplace with her eyes downcast, still avoiding his gaze. She was trying so hard to blend in, but her efforts seemed futile. He couldn't ignore her now. She was like an unsolved mystery, one he couldn't stop thinking about. The cafe wasn't crowded, and the few people that were there didn't seem to notice the alien woman walking by. But Kai did, and as if on cue, she noticed him too. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and she froze. For a long moment she just stared at him, and this time it wasn't with the usual rushed avoidance. It was something else, a look that spoke volumes without a word. Then, as quickly as it happened, she turned her head sharply and hurried down the street. He stood up, feeling that strange pull again, and decided to follow her, though not too close. He wasn't trying to stalk her. He just wanted to understand why she acted the way she did around him. His feet carried him without conscious thought, guiding him through the winding alleys of the market until she turned a corner and disappeared behind a large building. Kai paused, unsure of what to do next. It seemed like every time he got close to her, she ran away. Maybe he was just imagining things. After all, what could an alien woman want with a human? But something told him that her reaction was more than just avoidance. She wasn't trying to hide from him, she was hiding her emotions. As he walked back toward his lodgings that evening, Kai couldn't stop thinking about her. What was it that made her so different from all the other alien species he had encountered? Why did she react this way to him? Little did Kai know, the next time their paths crossed, things would change. But for now, he was left with a sense of confusion and wondering if he'd ever truly understand what was happening between him and the mysterious alien woman. For the next few days, Kai couldn't stop thinking about her. His mind constantly wandered back to the alien woman he had seen so many times in the market. She had avoided him, yet something about her seemed different from the others. She wasn't like the cold, calculating diplomats he had met before, always speaking in controlled tones. There was something genuine about her, something vulnerable that made him feel both intrigued and concerned. Kai kept telling himself that it didn't matter. He was here to explore and gather information, not get caught up in someone else's problems. He tried to push thoughts of her to the back of his mind as he continued his journey around the marketplace. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't help but glance around every corner, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. It wasn't until a few days later that their paths crossed again, but this time it was different. Kai had found a quiet spot at a small cafe on the outskirts of the market, a perfect place to relax after several days of walking and observing the various species. The cafe wasn't crowded, and the chatter around him felt distant, calming. He took a sip of his drink and leaned back in his chair, content with the peaceful moment. That was until he saw her again. Alira, the alien woman, stepped into the cafe, her long silver hair shining in the dim light. She seemed to hesitate at the entrance for a moment, as if unsure whether to come in. Her eyes scanned the room, and for the briefest of seconds they locked with Kai's. His heart skipped a beat, but instead of looking away like she usually did, she smiled, albeit shyly, and took a seat at a table near the window. Kai's curiosity bubbled up again. There was something about that smile, something that told him she wasn't running away anymore. She seemed different, more open. Without thinking, he stood up and walked over to her table. "Mind if I join you?" Kai asked, his voice tentative. Alira looked up at him, her cheeks turning a soft shade of blue, but this time it wasn't the usual panic. Instead, there was something else in her gaze, something more welcoming. "Of course," she replied, her voice smooth but still with a trace of uncertainty. Kai sat down across from her, unsure of what to say next. There was a strange silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt more like the calm before a storm, like both of them were waiting for something to shift. Finally, Alira spoke, her voice softer than before. I've been seeing you around the market," she said, her eyes flitting down to the table. "I wasn't sure if you'd come over, but I'm glad you did." Kai smiled. "I couldn't help myself. You seem like you have a lot on your mind." Illyra's eyes widened slightly, surprised that he had noticed. "I suppose I do," she said, looking at him with a mixture of gratitude and something else, something more personal. "It's just difficult sometimes. You're a human." "I've never really interacted with humans before." Kai raised an eyebrow. "I thought humans were all over this planet." She nodded. "They are, but it's different when you're from another species, another world entirely. You think you understand someone, but you never do, and now I'm not so sure." Kai leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean?" Illyra's blush deepened. She hesitated for a moment, clearly struggling with her words. "I've been avoiding you, but I don't know why. I don't know why I blush when I see you, or why I can't seem to stop thinking about you." Her admission caught Kai off guard. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. This was the most vulnerable he had ever seen her. The walls she had built up were starting to crumble, and he could see the real Alira behind her stoic exterior. "I don't want to make things awkward," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But there's something about you. Something I can't ignore." Kai's heart raced. He wasn't sure what to make of this, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to walk away. This was a moment, a connection, and he wasn't going to let it slip by. "You don't have to explain," Kai said softly, his voice warm. "I get it. I'm not sure what's going on either, but there's definitely something here. I don't know why, but I feel it too." Alira looked at him, her eyes wide. She seemed relieved, as though his acceptance of her feelings took a weight off her shoulders. For the first time, she smiled genuinely, a smile that lit up her face and made her look less like the perfect diplomat and more like just another person. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I was afraid you'd think I was strange." Kai chuckled. "Well, if you're strange, then I must be too. We're all strange in our own way, aren't we?" Alira laughed softly, the sound light and genuine. It was a beautiful sound, one Kai hadn't expected to hear from someone as composed as her. The more they spoke, the more Kai felt a strange sense of comfort. It wasn't like the relationships he'd had back on Earth. It was something different, something more. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, sharing stories of their respective worlds, their cultures, and their lives. Kai found himself listening intently, fascinated by everything Alira had to say. She spoke of her home planet, a place of great beauty where nature and technology coexisted in harmony. Her people were peaceful, but they had also faced their share of struggles. It was a story all too familiar to Kai, and for a moment, he felt a deeper understanding between them, but despite the comfortable conversation, there was an undercurrent of tension between them, a quiet but undeniable pull. It wasn't just the attraction, there was something more, something they both felt but didn't know how to explain. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cafe, Alira stood up. "I should be going," she said, a touch of regret in her voice. Kai stood with her, a feeling of reluctance settling over him. "I guess I should let you go then. But can we meet again tomorrow?" Alira smiled, and this time there was no hesitation. "Yes, I'd like that very much." As she left the cafe, Kai stood there for a moment, watching her walk away. There was something in the way she carried herself, something that made him feel like he was part of something bigger than himself. He wasn't sure what was happening between them, but for the first time in a long time, he felt alive with possibilities. The following days felt like a blur to Kai. He couldn't stop thinking about Alira, her smile, the way she looked at him like she saw something more than just another human passing through her world. Each time they spoke, something deep inside him stirred, like the beginning of a connection that neither of them fully understood but both felt. Her invitation to meet again had left him with a feeling of anticipation, a sense of something new and exciting. Kai woke up early the next day, an unusual restlessness in his chest. He spent the morning wandering the market, but his thoughts were consumed by Alira. What was this feeling he had when she was near? Was it just the novelty of her being from another world, or was there something more? Every time their eyes met, he felt like he was seeing not just her, but a piece of something greater. By midday, he had decided to head to the cafe again. He was certain she would be there, and the thought of seeing her again made his heart race. As he walked through the busy market streets, a small part of him wondered if he was being foolish. But the bigger part, the part that felt drawn to her, in ways he couldn't explain, told him that this was something worth exploring. When he arrived at the cafe, he was surprised to see Alira wasn't there yet. He took a seat by the window, watching the crowds pass by, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation they had shared. He had never met anyone like her. Her intelligence, her kindness, and the way she carried herself, it was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He didn't have to wait long. Alira walked in, her silver hair catching the light as she moved. She looked just as stunning as the first time he saw her, but today there was a softness about her, something that seemed more relaxed, more at ease. She spotted him immediately and made her way over to his table. "Hi," she said, her voice warm, though there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Hey," Kai replied with a smile, standing up to greet her. "It's good to see you again." Alira sat down across from him, her cheeks flushing ever so slightly, but this time it didn't seem to be out of embarrassment. It was something different, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "I was hoping you'd show up," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I couldn't stay away," Kai said, his voice sincere. "I've been looking forward to this." Alira smiled, but it was different than before. There was a hint of vulnerability in her expression, as though she was opening up to something she hadn't expected. The tension that had once existed between them, that strange feeling of both wanting to get closer but holding back, was slowly starting to fade. It wasn't gone completely, but now there was something more comfortable in their presence. They spent the next hour talking about everything, nothing in particular, just getting to know each other better. Alira spoke about her people, her homeworld, and the peaceful existence they had built. Kai listened intently, fascinated by the way she described her culture. It was a world that valued knowledge, harmony, and understanding so different from his own. "I've spent most of my life trying to understand other species," Alira said. "But when I met you, I realized that I don't know anything about humans. It's like I'm still learning," Kai chuckled. "I think we're all still learning about each other. You're not the only one." Alira looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes softening. "You're not like the other humans I've met," she said quietly. "You're different." Kai felt a warmth spread through him. "How so?" She hesitated before answering, her gaze drifting away for a moment. Listen, you don't judge, you just understand. It's rare to find someone like that." Her words made Kai's heart skip a beat. He had never thought of himself as anything special, but hearing Alira speak like that made him feel like he was part of something greater than himself. As the conversation continued, they began to speak less about their worlds and more about themselves. They shared their fears, their hopes, and the things that made them who they were. Alira's walls were slowly crumbling, and she seemed more open with every word. For Kai, it felt like he was seeing her for the first time, not just as the diplomat or the alien woman, but as Alira, a person with her own dreams and desires. The cafe grew quieter as the day went on, and before Kai knew it, the sun was beginning to set. He glanced outside, watching the orange and purple hues of the sky blend together. The evening was approaching, and the market was slowly emptying out, the crowds thinning as people went home to rest. Alira stood up suddenly, catching Kai off guard. "I should go," she said, her voice tinged with hesitation. "I didn't mean to keep you here for so long." Kai stood as well, his heart sinking a little. He didn't want her to leave, not yet. "Are you sure?" Alira nodded, but there was a hesitation in her step, a pause that made it clear she wasn't entirely ready to say goodbye. "I have a meeting soon," she explained, her eyes not meeting his. "I can't stay." Kai took a deep breath. He wasn't sure where this was going, but he felt something inside him urge him to speak. "Before you go," he said, his voice steady, "I want you to know something." Alira turned to face him, her expression curious. "I don't know what's happening between us," he continued, "but I feel something, and I don't want to walk away from it, no matter how complicated it might seem." Alira's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she said nothing, but then her lips curled into a small, shy smile. "I feel it too," she admitted, "but I don't know what to do with it." Kai reached out, his hand resting gently on hers. "Maybe we don't need to know right now. Maybe we can just see where this goes." Alira didn't pull away. Instead, she let her fingers brush against his, a quiet understanding passing between them. "I think I'd like that," she whispered. Kai smiled, feeling a surge of hope. There was something between them, something more than either of them could explain, but they didn't need to explain it. Not yet, they had time. As Alira turned to leave, she paused at the door, looking back at him. "I'll see you again soon," she said, her voice soft. Kai nodded. "I'll be waiting." And with that, she disappeared into the evening. Leaving Kai standing in the cafe, his heart racing with the possibilities of what the future might hold. He didn't know where this connection would lead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt that it was worth exploring. The following days felt like a slow, steady build of anticipation for Kai. Every moment without seeing Alira seemed to stretch longer than it should. They had shared something real, something that neither of them could easily forget. Their conversations had been genuine, and the connection between them had only grown stronger. Even though they hadn't fully understood what it meant yet, Kai's thoughts kept returning to her. He found himself wondering what she was doing, how she was feeling, and why this strange pull toward her kept growing with every passing hour. His initial curiosity had blossomed into something deeper, something that felt like it might be more than just a fleeting attraction, but he didn't know how to voice it. It felt like a slow burn, one he couldn't control. He was at the same cafe again as he had been for the past few days. This was their place, their quiet corner of the world, amidst the hustle of the marketplace. Kai knew it was only a matter of time before Alira would show up. They had both agreed to meet here once again, but Kai's thoughts were tangled with what he wanted to say. What had changed between them? Was it just chemistry or something more? Could they trust each other enough to let it grow? Just as he was lost in thought, the familiar figure of Alira appeared in the doorway. Her silver hair shimmered in the light as she walked toward him, her movements graceful but hesitant. There was a difference in her demeanor today. She wasn't quite as composed as she had been before. It was subtle, but Kai noticed it immediately, the way her gaze flickered to the floor. The slight tension in her shoulders. Kai stood up to greet her, offering a warm smile. "Hey, I'm glad you made it." Alira smiled back, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she said softly, settling into the chair across from him. "I had a lot on my mind." "You've been busy, haven't you?" Kai asked, his voice kind. "I understand. I don't mind waiting." Alira looked at him, her expression both guarded and vulnerable. "I don't think I've been able to think about much else but you." "U.S.," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I keep wondering what's happening between us." Kai felt a weight settle on his chest. He had been thinking the same thing, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel even more real. "I've been wondering the same thing," he admitted. "I don't know where this is going, Alira, but I feel something and it's hard to ignore." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "I didn't expect to feel like this. It's confusing." Her voice wavered slightly. "I've spent my life learning about other cultures, other beings, but when it comes to you, it's like I'm learning everything for the first time. It feels new, and I don't know how to handle it." Kai leaned forward, his voice gentle but earnest. "You don't have to handle it alone. We can figure this out together." "I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, Alira just stared at him, her gaze softening. Then her lips curved into a faint smile, though it still held a trace of uncertainty. "You're right. It's just, I've never been in a situation like this. I'm not used to feeling this way." Kai reached across the table, his hand resting lightly over hers. He could feel the tension in her fingers, but she didn't pull away. "Neither am I, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to have all the answers right now." Illyra's eyes locked with his, and for a moment there was nothing else but the space between them filled with words left unspoken. Her heart was racing, and she could feel the warmth of his hand over hers. It was simple, yet it felt like a promise. A quiet, unspoken agreement that whatever was happening, they would face it together. I think I need more time to understand what's happening," Alira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't want to run away from it. I just don't know what this means." Kai nodded. "I get it, and I'll give you all the time you need. But I'll be here whenever you're ready." The weight that had been pressing on Alira's chest seemed to lift, and for the first time in days she felt a sense of relief. She had been so unsure of herself, so afraid of what might happen if she let her guard down. But Kai's words, his patience, and the way he was looking at her like she was someone worth waiting for gave her the courage she needed to open up. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking, this time without the heaviness that had lingered before. The conversation flowed easily between them, like two people who had known each other for years. They laughed about small things, shared personal stories, and discovered new things about each other, things they hadn't had the chance to discuss before. It was effortless, and for the first time, Alira felt a little less burdened by her responsibilities, by the expectations of her people. As the day wore on, Kai could sense the change in her. The tension that had been there before, the uncertainty, had slowly started to dissolve. It was replaced by something else, a quiet understanding. Alira was still figuring out her feelings, but now she wasn't afraid to explore them. And she knew, deep down, that whatever happened, she wasn't alone in this. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cafe. The soft golden light bathed the room in warmth, and Kai could feel the weight of the day settle around them. The conversation had slowed, and for a moment, the two of them simply sat there in silence, comfortable in each other's presence. "I should probably get going," Alira said, her voice soft as she stood up. "I don't want to keep you too long." Kai stood with her, feeling reluctant to say goodbye. "Are you sure?" Alira nodded, offering a small smile. "Yeah, but I'll see you again, right?" "Of course," Kai replied. "I'll be waiting." "You don't have to worry about that." She smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't tinged with uncertainty. It was genuine, full of promise. "Thank you, Kai, for being patient with me." "I don't mind," Kai said softly. "Take care, Alira." As she walked toward the door, Kai couldn't help but watch her go. There was something different in the air between them now, an unspoken understanding, a promise that they would face whatever came next together. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: he wasn't going to let her go. Not now. The days that followed felt different for Kai. He couldn't quite explain it, but something had shifted. The connection between him and Alira had deepened, though they still didn't have all the answers. They had spent more time together, talking and learning about each other, but every time they met, it felt like they were on the edge of something bigger. Alira had opened up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else, and he found himself drawn to her more than ever. Yet, despite the warmth he felt in her presence, there was still a question hanging between them. What would happen next? Kai didn't know if it was a friendship, something more, or if it was just a fleeting moment in the grand scheme of things. But as the days passed, the uncertainty began to feel less important. They didn't need all the answers right now. What mattered was that they were together, and the future could wait. It was late one evening when Kai found himself walking through the market again. The moon hung high above, casting a soft glow over the bustling stalls and quiet streets. He had been out running errands, but now his thoughts were fixed on Alira. She had sent him a message earlier that day asking if he wanted to meet. The thought of seeing her again made his heart race with excitement. Every time they met, it felt like stepping into something new, something that was just beginning, yet already felt so familiar. He made his way to the cafe, the familiar place where they had shared their first real conversation. As he entered, he spotted Alira sitting at their usual table. Her silver hair seemed to glow in the dim light, and she was looking out the window, lost in thought. Kai couldn't help but smile as he walked over to her. "Hey," he said softly. His voice warm. Alira turned to look at him, and for a moment their eyes locked. The usual hesitation wasn't there this time. She smiled, a soft, welcoming smile that seemed to speak of everything that had been left unsaid. "Hi, Kai," she replied, her voice gentle. He sat down across from her, the comfortable silence between them settling in. It was amazing how much they had shared in such a short time, and yet there was still so much to discover. Alira had become someone Kai couldn't stop thinking about, someone whose presence made the world feel a little bit smaller, a little bit more connected. "I've been thinking," Alira said after a few moments, her voice hesitant but steady, "about everything we've talked about us." Kai's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what she was going to say, but he could sense that this was important. "What about us?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Alira took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. "I've spent so much of my life trying to keep everything under control. I've never let myself feel things like this before. But when I'm with you, I feel like I can just be myself, and I don't want to hide from that anymore." Kai's heart soared at her words. It was like everything he had been feeling, everything they had shared, was finally being acknowledged. "Alira, He paused, not sure how to express what he was feeling. "I feel the same way. I don't know where this is going, but I don't want to pretend it's not there. I don't want to walk away from this connection." Alira reached across the table, her fingers brushing against his. "Then we don't have to figure everything out all at once. We can just take it one step at a time, together?" Kai nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. The weight that had been hanging between them, the uncertainty, the fear of the unknown seemed to lift. It didn't matter that they didn't have all the answers. What mattered was that they were willing to explore this, to face whatever came next side by side. The next few hours passed quickly as they continued to talk, each moment deepening the bond between them. They laughed about small things, shared more about their lives, and enjoyed each other's company without the pressure of having to define what they were. For the first time, Alira seemed completely at ease, her usual composure replaced by a relaxed, genuine joy. It was as if she had finally allowed herself to let go of all the expectations she had carried for so long. As the evening drew to a close, Alira stood up and Kai followed suit. They walked together outside, the cool night air refreshing after the warmth of the cafe. The stars above them sparkled brightly, and for a moment everything felt perfect. No words were needed between them. They simply walked side by side, each of them content in the shared silence. When they reached the edge of the market, Alira stopped and turned to face him. There was a soft smile on her face, one that made her look even more beautiful than usual. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being patient with me, for understanding." Kai smiled back, feeling his heart swell. "There's nothing to thank me for," he said. "I'm just happy to be here with you." Alira's smile widened, and she stepped closer to him. The air between them seemed to thrum with the unspoken words they had been dancing around for so long. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no fear. There was only a quiet certainty. "I don't want to say goodbye," Alira whispered. Kai's heart beat faster at her words. "Then don't," he said softly. With that, Alira reached up, her fingers gently brushing against his cheek. It was a simple, tender gesture, but it spoke volumes. And then, without a word, she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that felt like the beginning of something much bigger than either of them had expected. The world seemed to pause for a moment, as if holding its breath. Kai's mind raced, but in the best way possible. He felt as if everything had led to this point, the connection, the uncertainty, the trust, and it was all coming together in this single, perfect moment. When they finally pulled away, Alira's eyes were filled with warmth and something deeper, something Kai hadn't expected, but now couldn't ignore. "I'm glad you're here, Kai," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm glad we're here," Kai smiled, his heart full. "So am I." And in that moment, they both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. No matter where this path led, they had already taken the most important step. They had chosen each other.